Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of communication. To some, it appears passive, weak, like you've given up or you have nothing left to say. But those who truly understand the power of silence know this. Silence is never empty. It's full of meaning, full of messages, full of strength. When you go silent, truly silent, not out of spite, not out of fear, but out of self-mastery, people notice, they feel the shift. At first, they may act like it doesn't matter, like they're unbothered. They'll go on with their life as if you were just another background noise that faded away. But internally, something else begins to happen. They start wondering, questioning, replaying conversations. The human mind hates uncertainty, and silence, especially your silence, creates a vacuum they can't ignore. You see, when you stop responding, they lose their control. The power they once had to provoke, confuse, manipulate, or even charm, it's gone. All they're left with is their own thoughts, their own guilt, their own reflection. And that silence, that space, it becomes a mirror. They'll wonder why you stopped explaining yourself, why you stopped arguing, why you no longer react. And the most powerful part, you don't need to answer. Your silence speaks louder than their noise ever could, because silence isn't weakness, it's control. It's choosing not to waste your energy where it won't be respected. It's refusing to let someone else dictate your inner peace. And the more you embody that, the more their mind starts to spiral. What are you thinking? Are you done? Have you moved on? Are you okay without them? They won't say it. Pride won't let them. But their curiosity will grow louder than their ego. Every time they pick up their phone, they'll wonder if you've messaged. Every time someone mentions your name, they'll pause, pretending not to care, while secretly hoping for a clue. Silence turns their certainty into doubt, their comfort into restlessness. And the irony is, they expected your silence to be temporary. They thought it was a game, a phase, something you'd break just to reconnect. But when you stay silent, not to punish, but to protect, they slowly realize this is no longer about them. It's about you, your growth, your peace, your boundaries. This is what they don't expect. They're used to your reaction, your need to fix things, your constant presence. But when you shift that energy inward, when you stop performing for their approval, it unsettles them. Because now they're no longer the center of your world. And that's when the questions start turning into realizations. They remember the way you always showed up, the way you listened, the way you cared even when it was inconvenient, the consistency, the patience, the love, it all comes back to them. But now there's no one left to reassure them, just silence. And that silence, they start hearing their own voice inside it, not yours. The voice of doubt, the voice of regret, the voice that asks, did I push too far? But they won't admit it, not to you, maybe not even to themselves, because ego rarely lets people say the words that matter most when it's too late. What they secretly think when you go silent is layered. It's not always guilt. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's discomfort, because your silence makes them face something they've been avoiding, their own behavior, their patterns, their choices. Without you there to respond, to defend, to absorb, all that energy reflects back at them. And reflection, real, honest reflection, is something many people run from. This is why silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the beginning of awareness. When you stop talking, they finally start listening, not to you, but to themselves, to the things they ignored when you were still present. the things they dismissed while you were explaining, repeating, hoping. They realize you were the one who always gave more chances, who stayed longer than you should have, who forgave more than they deserved. And now that you're silent, there's no way to reset the dynamic. You're no longer holding the emotional weight of the connection. You've placed it down, and you've walked away without a single word. And that changes everything. It's easy to take people for granted when they're always there, when their messages still come, when their voice still fills the room. But the moment that presence fades, when the phone stays silent, when the warmth disappears, they start to understand what they've lost. And that understanding arrives too late. You won't see this in their actions, not always. Some people will double down, pretend harder, act colder, but it's just armor. It's how they protect themselves from the impact of your absence. They may talk to others, they may post like nothing happened, but inside, they're wrestling with the weight of your silence. Because silence doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it doesn't defend. And that terrifies those who once relied on your reaction to feel important. The longer the silence lasts, the more they realize it wasn't attention you needed. It was respect. It wasn't a reply. It was reciprocity. And they didn't give it, so you stopped asking. What they secretly think when you go silent is this: they're serious this time, and they're right. They realize something even deeper the longer your silence holds. That your absence is not just the lack of words, it's the presence of boundaries. And for people who are used to overstepping them, nothing is more unsettling. Your silence draws a line they never believed you'd actually draw. But here it is, real, unwavering, and enforced not with rage, but with distance. This isn't a tantrum. This isn't a strategy. This is growth. Because silence is often the final stage of caring, not the beginning of indifference, but the quiet surrender that comes when you've done everything you could and still nothing changed. Silence is the exhale that follows exhaustion. And though they might not admit it, they start to respect you more in your silence than they ever did in your noise. When you were explaining, defending, justifying, they were comfortable, they had control. But when you stopped, they were left with a version of you they had never seen before, grounded, detached, and free. They think about reaching out, but something stops them. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's pride, maybe it's the knowledge that they no longer have the same access to you because something has changed. And it's not just the conversation, it's the entire dynamic. The silence became a reset, a restructuring of who you are and what you'll tolerate. And they can feel it, even if you haven't said a word. They start to realize the difference between attention and connection, between temporary interest and true effort. You gave them all the chances to show up the right way, and they chose convenience over consistency. Now the silence forces them to sit with the consequences, and still, you don't return. Not because you're playing a game, but because the version of you that once would have returned no longer exists. You've grown in the silence. You've rebuilt. You've recentered. And maybe, in the quiet, you discovered that you don't miss them anymore. Not the real them, but the idea of them you once clung to. The illusion you carried while waiting for them to care in the way you always did. Now you carry yourself. You nurture your own peace. You fill your own silence. What they secretly think, what they will never say out loud, is this: you slipping away was the moment they realized what they had and what they will never have again. Because once you find peace in silence, no noise can lure you back. What they don't see, what most people never see, is how much strength it takes to stay silent, to not react, to not send that message, make that call, or ask for the closure you know will never come the way you deserve it. It's not passivity. It's power. It's mastery over the very part of you that once needed their attention to feel whole. Now, you're whole without it. Your silence isn't empty. It's filled with all the things you chose not to say because you no longer need to. You've realized your peace is sacred, your energy is limited, and you will no longer waste either on proving your worth to someone who never truly saw it. They may remember you as the one who stopped talking, but you'll remember yourself as the one who finally started listening to your own intuition, your own needs, your own healing. And that shift, that turning inward, is where true transformation begins. Stoicism doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you no longer let your feelings control you. You feel deeply, but you act wisely. You walk away not because you're heartless, but because you've finally grown a heart strong enough to let go. So, if they ever wonder what you were thinking when you went silent, if they ever question whether you still care, if they ever feel the ache of your absence and mistake it for your indifference, let them wonder, because silence is not an admission of defeat. It's the quiet anthem of someone who's reclaimed their power, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to evolve. You've said enough, you've given enough, and now you rest in your silence, not as a void, but as a boundary, not as a weapon, but as wisdom, not as distance, but as peace. And that peace, it's the loudest thing they'll never forget.